I'm Representative Julie von Haefen. I'm sorry I have a little bit of a cold, so excuse me if I am sniffly this morning, but I'm so happy to be here today with Interfaith Voices for Reproductive Freedom to talk about House Bill 1120, which is a bill that I filed this short session to focus on crisis pregnancy centers and maternal health. So right now, North Carolina is really facing a maternal and infant health care crisis, especially in our rural communities, where women cannot access prenatal care. House Bill 1120 redirects $6.75 million from the Pregnancy Care Fellowship, which has operated with virtually no financial accountability, and redirects that money to programs with documented records of helping mothers and babies. And for the first time, it establishes a baseline financial transparency standard that any pregnancy care center or pregnancy crisis center must meet before receiving public funds. So North Carolina taxpayers expect accountability from anyone spending public money, and these centers should be no exception. This really isn't about what these centers believe, it's about what they owe the taxpayers who fund them. The numbers we can see are alarming. Even with incomplete data that's submitted to for reporting requirements, the Pregnancy Care Fellowship's own reports, which cover the period of 2024 and 2025, raise serious fiscal concerns. I want to talk about a few examples that we can see in the reporting from CPCF. One of the crisis pregnancy centers that receives taxpayer money is called Lawrence Hope, and it's located in Surf City. They received $32,000 of state funds to serve just 9 clients. That's $3,600 per client. The Uhari Women's Center, which is located in Troy, North Carolina, received $61,000 to serve 40 clients. That's $1,526 per client. And the Allegheny Pregnancy Center in Sparta received $69,000 and just served 58 clients. That's $1,202 per client. For context, the Nurse Family Partnership, which is a proven organization run by DHHS, delivers comprehensive support, including nurse home visits, prenatal and postnatal care, health education, and parenting coaching for just a fraction of those per client costs, with decades of documented outcomes. When a program costs over $3,600 per client, and we can't say what that client received, something has gone terribly wrong. It doesn't regulate this bill does not regulate what these centers say or believe, only what they must disclose to receive public money. The bill requires that before funding, they provide full revenue and expense budgets, staff credentials, and client service data by category. After the funding, they must do annual reporting by December 1st, which is available to the public within 20 business days. The center must also provide clients a copy of their own records within 10 days, free of charge. These are not burdensome requirements. Any well-run organization receiving public funds should already have this information. We're simply asking them to share it. Because if you're doing good work with the public's money, you'd think you'd want to tell everyone about it. North Carolina ranks among the worst states for maternal and infant mortality and prenatal access care. Our communities need real investment. This $6.75 million can be redirected with programs with proven results, and I listed several of them in the bill, including, like I said, the Nurse Family Partnership, which has 40 years of peer-reviewed evidence showing reduced infant mortality, improved birth outcomes, and long-term economic benefits for families. Another program is called Healthy Beginnings, a prenatal care and early childhood resource for low-income families, as well as Safe Sleep North Carolina, which addresses a leading preventable cause of infant death. These programs measure cost per outcome, and that's where our public dollars should go. North Carolina women, especially in rural communities, need real maternal health support, and this bill makes sure that that's what they get. Centers doing valuable work have nothing to fear from this bill and everything to gain. Standard reporting lets well-run centers prove their value and defend their funding. But without transparency, taxpayers can't know whether their dollars are going to direct client services or to marketing and administrative overhead unrelated to serving pregnant women. Accountability is not a threat to programs at work. It's proof that they need to maintain the public support. North Carolina has an obligation to its mothers, its infants, and its taxpayers. Public money must be accountable, and maternal health investments must deliver maternal health outcomes. I'm proud to carry this legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support it in this short session. Now I would like to introduce Reverend Katey Zay, the Executive Director of Religious Communities for Reproductive Choice.
Thank you. My name is Reverend Katey Zay. I'm an ordained Baptist minister, and I serve as CEO of the Religious Community for Reproductive Choice. I'm also the mother of an 11-year-old daughter, and I know that crisis pregnancy centers are dangerous. They are the creators and perpetrators of crisis, giving out false information, misdiagnosing ectopic pregnancies, and missing other life-threatening conditions, and relying on deceptive practices to prey upon some of the most marginalized members of our communities. And they are funded by public dollars. This is a moral crisis.
That's right.
Crisis pregnancy centers are unregulated, non-medical facilities, and yet they have received millions in public funding. Some of these centers claim that even basic oversight would violate their religious freedom. But religious freedom should never be weaponized to justify deception or to avoid basic standards of care. Meanwhile, legislators in North Carolina and across the country have stripped away the power of actual medical providers, nurses and doctors who spend years learning how to care for pregnant patients, all while maternal mortality continues to rise. Most of these deaths are preventable. And we know that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. This is a maternal and reproductive health care crisis of our own making. And as people of faith, we cannot stand idly by while this crisis escalates. We must reframe what it means to promote a culture of life. A true culture of life looks like patients receiving accurate information, real health care from trained professionals, support for the sacred decisions that they make about their bodies, their lives, and their families, and community care in their moments of need. We must uphold the values of human dignity and human flourishing in service of a more just vision of this world, one in which every person, regardless of their income or their background or where they live, has access to the care and resources they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. And as a follower of Jesus Christ, I believe this is what he meant when he said he came to bring abundant life to all. Thank you. And I'd like to bring up Reverend Lisa Garcia-Sampson.
Good morning. Good morning. We stand here today as people of faith from many traditions, united in a shared call to end state funding for crisis pregnancy centers and to recommit to the health and reproductive freedom of families across North Carolina. We must tell the truth about this moment. The conditions we face today, crisis pregnancy centers, abortion restrictions, and the failure to fund real health care are not separate issues. They are inextricably connected. They are rooted in our nation's dark legacy of controlling Black and brown bodies and the legacy of Christian nationalism that seeks to wield power by imposing the will of a minority over the many. Those so-called Christian values, let's be clear, they do not reflect the beliefs of most Christians. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. But all of us here and in our state, we recognize and we affirm the majority Christian values. This is not those majority Christian values. And more than that, the act of opposing one narrow set of religious views through public policy is not faith. It is a grave distortion of the very nature of faith. What you see here today is something different. Today's gathering reflects people of many faiths fighting for each family's right to live healthy lives and to have the freedom to make decisions and to take actions in accordance with their own values, not the values of an extreme minority. Now today, as we've already heard, there is an important issue that we want to talk about today, and that is the crisis of our infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates. In the wealthiest country in the world, our infant mortality rate remains shamefully high, over 70% higher than comparable nations, which we know is driven in large part by racial disparities in healthcare. And here in North Carolina, even though we have recently made progress which we celebrate, we still rank among the worst in the country despite having the resources and the world-class healthcare institutions to lead in this area. Don't let anyone in this building tell you that this crisis is unavoidable. This is a policy choice, reinforced in every state budget that fails to invest in healthcare. Every dollar that goes to crisis pregnancy centers instead of real healthcare, and every tax cut for wealthy corporations is a dollar taken away from evidence-based healthcare that can improve outcomes for mothers and for babies. It does not have to be this way, and we know that. And that is why the people of this state will continue to show up and lift our voices until the General Assembly hears and honors the needs of the people. We are here to urge you to listen to your conscience and make a different choice. Stop funding crisis pregnancy centers and invest in real health care. Because when our leaders choose ideology over care, when they have the power to address injustice and choose not to, they betray the people of this state. Not only are they complicit, but they are, in fact, the architects of this healthcare crisis. We will not stand by while our communities pay the price. Thank you. And now I will invite up my colleague, Reverend Hannah Bender, Rabbi of Judea Reformed Congregation in Durham.
Good morning. As Reverend Lisa shared, I'm Rabbi Hannah Bender. I'm a rabbi at Judea Reformed Congregation in Durham, North Carolina. And I'm very grateful to be a part of this gathering this morning with folks of faith who are grounded in the profound belief in human dignity, agency, and truth. Yes. Judaism is a thousands-year-old tradition of which I have the honor of teaching and studying every day with my community. And we carry this as a tradition of faith, but more so a tradition of action. Most of our texts, most of Jewish law aid us in how to create community, how to live in community, and how to sustain community. In the Talmud, one of our sacred books containing laws and debates of our ancestors, it states, Asur lignov da'at havriut. It is prohibited to deceive people. The words lignov da'at directly translates to stealing someone's mind, to steal someone's knowledge, to steal their intelligence. This concept, known as genevat da'at, is a category of law around deception, and it forbids not only outright lies, but creating any misleading impression. That if you manipulate someone's understanding of reality or their ability to gain knowledge, you have committed a moral wrong. Genevat da'at is really about dignity, about the right of every person to make decisions based on truth and not on coercion or confusion. And we're here today asking folks to support House Bill 1120 because we know that the people of North Carolina are being deceived. Crisis pregnancy centers masquerade as medical facilities without being regulated as such. Visitors are often misled about the care offered by staff or volunteers who are typically not licensed providers. Studies show that these centers delay the onset of prenatal care, putting pregnant folks at risk. And these centers themselves cannot offer prenatal care. They are not regulated, and they lack transparency and accountability, in direct violation of Genivat Da'at. Visitors of these centers, often vulnerable and scared, are misled, given not just inaccurate information, but withheld information about their care and their options. Within Jewish tradition, this is not a neutral issue. This is not a difference of opinion. When our funds are being used towards institutions that intentionally shape or distort information in order to influence deeply personal medical decisions, this is stealing someone's mind. This is deception. Now, my faith does not demand that we all make the same choices, but it does insist that each person be able to make their choices with full access to truth. Real dignity requires real information. 40% of North Carolina counties have no hospitals or birth centers that offer maternity care, and the fact that we have funding going towards these centers instead of building true medical facilities, evidence-based maternal and infant care, is a desecration of the sacred right that all people have. The Talmud teaches that the seal of the Holy One is emet, is truth. And so when we build systems rooted in honesty, we reflect something sacred. But when we allow deception to shape people's most intimate decisions, we fall short of that divine calling. I hope that today and going forward, we can commit ourselves to a world where no one's minds are stolen, where all North Carolinians have access to accurate information, to real health care, where our public funding supports care that is truthful, transparent, and worthy of all of the people that it serves. Yes. Thank you.
Wow, those are powerful words. Thank you, all of you, for coming today. Thank you, all the advocates that are here. I did want to mention, I also wanted to thank my colleague, Representative Butler, who's the co-primary sponsor with me, and Representative Bwansi on this bill. I just did want to mention 2 resources for the press that if you are interested, I would be happy to send you the reports that I referred to from Carolina Pregnancy Care Fellowship, where you can see the numbers and the reporting. And I also wanted to point out a resource that I've been working with a national organization around crisis pregnancy centers, and they put together some really interesting numbers about the amount of money that's going to CPCF versus the amount of money that's going to North Carolina free clinics in the state, and how the value provided per dollar of both of those sets of funding. Just for one example, and I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but the one that stuck out at me was the number comparing crisis pregnancy centers with free clinics. The value provided per dollar for CPCF crisis pregnancy centers is 32 cents. For North Carolina free clinics, it's $5.40. So, I mean, just to show right there that, our money could be used much more efficiently and effectively if we moved it to actual evidence-based clinics that are actually helping people. So I'll go ahead and stop there and take any questions, and I'm sure any of the other speakers would be happy to take a question as well. Yes.
So how exactly can someone just like on the street tell the difference between what is a crisis pregnancy center?
That's part of the problem. Yes, is that crisis pregnancy centers basically advertise themselves as clinics. If you look at any of the advertising, even if you go on Google and search pregnancy care, abortion clinics, anything, the first thing that usually pops up is a crisis pregnancy center, because they pay in the algorithm on Google to get their clinics up at the top. And a lot of the money that's spent, not just here in North Carolina, but nationally, taxpayer money is spent to boost their algorithm in a lot of internet searches. That is, you just hit on the main problem, is that they advertise themselves and hold themselves out as healthcare clinics, and they're not.
They even wear scrubs to
Yes.
create that deception.
I'm fairly new to North Carolina, so would you say that crisis pregnancy centers have increased in number since Roe was overturned back? in 20
Absolutely.
Do you have any numbers?
I don't right in front of me, but I'd be happy to get those to you. I know that there's, hundreds of crisis pregnancy centers. Go ahead, Emma.
There's 100 in the state.
100 crisis pregnancy centers in the state, and now we're down to 9 abortion clinics. So we know that another clinic just closed in Greensboro recently. So if you look at the map of like where maternal health care is located, where reproductive health care is located, and then you look at a map of crisis pregnancy centers in the state, it is prolific compared to where people can actually go to get real care.
Do you know where I can find that stat with the 100 CPC missing? Yes.
I can find the
Okay.
website for you, yeah.
If you send me an email, I'll be happy
Okay.
to send you resources.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And also the fact that the Durham Crisis Pregnancy Center is located in the middle of a huge medical clinic area.
They
So
do-
it alone is not a real clinic, and so there's no way a young person coming there seeking help, who's, your eyes, everything tells you this is a clinic, and it's not.
They often locate themselves by other healthcare clinics, and very often they're located around universities and colleges. There used to be one right on Hillsborough Street, right across from NC State. So you'll see a lot of them locate themselves in places that also you would think that they were healthcare clinics.
And they're not subject to the same.
They are not.
Okay.
They are not regulated healthcare clinics. The other thing is that you'll hear them talk about HIPAA a lot. They'll tell clients that they're covered by HIPAA, meaning their healthcare information is private. They are not subject to HIPAA. They use that terminology to make people feel safer in giving them a lot of personal information, but they are not subject to HIPAA at all because they're not healthcare clinics.
They're expert at something, but it is not health.
Any other
They're
questions?
experts at marketing.
Yeah.
I know you've done a lot of work on this issue, Representative. Do you know how many times you've introduced legislation trying to address crisis pregnancy centers?
At least probably 3 or 4 over the years.
And I did it before that.
Yeah, Representative Butler is now, working with me. And every year, I really try to come at this issue in a different perspective because there's so many different ways that you can talk about this issue, whether it's financial transparency and accountability, whether it's moving the money to actual healthcare clinics, whether it's just removing the money from the budget. I filed many budget amendments over the years to try to move the money. So, like I said, I'm working with a great national organization, and we actually put together, I worked with them this past year to put together a playbook for legislators with different ideas of basically how to file legislation to, hold these places accountable. So
And it's increased every year. It's not just like they have.
The funding. Yeah.
One level funding. It's exponential.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that.
Kind of on that note, so some of those bills didn't gain a lot of traction. How did you conclude that this was the best language for the bill to kind of hopefully progress more than previous attempts?
I think that, what I hear, whether it's crisis pregnancy centers, whether it's the private school voucher program, whether it's any kind of taxpayer-funded program that we fund here in this building, taxpayers want accountability for the money that we are spending. And this is just another example of us spending taxpayer money and absolutely having no evidence to show that it's doing anything. And I think that if you talk to any taxpayer in the state, they would not like that, whether it's, something that they agree with or something that they don't. And that's why in my comments, I said, you would think that anybody that, either supports what these programs do or doesn't, they still want accountability for how our money is being spent. And so to me, I titled the bill Financial Effectiveness and Transparency Act. Doesn't have anything to do with what the crisis pregnancy centers do, although I obviously vehemently disagree, just like everybody has said, with what they do. But I still think we need effective financial spending and transparent financial spending, and these don't have that.
What are those national organizations that you've kind of partnered in this bill to come up with language and moving forward?
It's called Public Leadership Institute, PLI. They do a lot around this issue, and they have actually helped me go through a lot of these reports and put together some of those comparisons. So they've been a great partner in this work as well. And Planned Parenthood and Pro-Choice North Carolina here in our state, they also do fantastic work on this issue. Anybody else?
I have more.
Yeah. Oh, yay, I love it.
The Safe Sleep NC gets $97,000 annually through the federal block grant for maternal and child health.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The Safe Sleep NC
Oh,
gets
yeah.
$97,000 through the federal block grant for maternal and child health. The NC Child Fatality Task Force has recommended an increase in funding to be able to reach more people and prevent deaths. They're reporting about one infant death every 3 days.
Wow.
You folded these programs, these DHHS programs, into the bills to receive more funding. Can you talk about the thought process and the programs that you did identify and the connection to DHHS?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with DHHS for their recommendations on what programs that they would like to see that $6.75 million go toward. I asked them directly, because I usually use Nurse Family Partnership because I am more familiar with it and it's been around for 40 years. But adding Healthy Beginnings and the Safe Sleep program was a recommendation of DHHS for that very reason, is that they've seen that it's doing great work and it's combating that extremely high infant mortality rate that you just said, and they recommended those programs to me. So to me, that just shows that they are evidence-based. They are doing the things that they need to do, and they just need more funding to do more.
Yeah, and then one more. The Perinatal Quality Collaborative North Carolina, which focused on improving the health of mothers and babies since 2009, started winding down its work since it lost some of that state funding. Senator Bergen and Representative Grant Campbell have voiced support in restoring that funding and the work done by the nonprofit. Have you had any discussions of compromise that would kind of fund some of these initiatives or things that you're kind of have identified in the bill of kind of reallocating some funding that's being used to these programs that are recognized as important by both parties?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would be supportive of anything that, helps mothers and babies. Like I said, these programs are the ones that DHHS recommended. I'm not as familiar with the one that you mentioned, but I think that, I get frustrated because, both of those members are in the majority party. They have the ability to fund that program if they wanted to, or to advocate for that in budget negotiations. I'm not in those rooms. I mean, I can tell them, hey, I think you should do this, but really they have the power. And so I implore them to move this money into that program if that's the one that they think is better. We have the money to do it. We just have to make those choices, like one of the speakers said. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're not advocating for a total elimination of these pregnancy crisis centers.
Yes, I am.
Well, it's just outlining a sense of accountability of reporting and requiring certain things. It's not removing them totally. Is that a compromise in the bill or a response to things you've seen in previous iterations of attempts of this issue?
So I think my approach this year was, okay, well, one, because we haven't passed the budget, a lot of the money that went to CPCs have actually stopped because a lot of those were non-recurring funding sources. So the only recurring funding in the budget that's continuing to go to CPCs is for Carolina Pregnancy Care Fellowship. And just so you're clear, if you don't know what CPCF is, it's an umbrella organization that then funnels out the money to individual CPCs. So they're not a CPC. They're just kind of the umbrella organization that decides which ones the money's going to go to. And so I would say that, yes, I want to move all that recurring funding to those 3 programs I mentioned with DHHS. I mean, these organizations are nonprofits. They can operate on their own with, private funds, whatever, but I just don't feel like taxpayers should be paying for them. So we need to remove all the taxpayer-funded money that's going to those programs. Secondly, if we don't do the first part of the bill and move the money, the second part is if we are going to pay money to these organizations, they need to be held accountable through reporting requirements and transparency. Right. So that it's kind of a two-step piece of legislation.
Thanks for your clarification.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The week after the Assembly had published a large investigation on the Crisis Pregnancy Care Fellowship and state funding, Carolina Journal published an op-ed from one of the members in North Carolina Values Coalition saying that crisis pregnancy centers are worth every dollar, or every penny, of taxpayer money. And they talked about, you know, material goods that people got, as well as parenting classes and healthcare services. What are they talking about when they're mentioning those things?
Well, again, we don't really know. I mean, that's another part of this, you know, the bill is that we need to show, one, what services are they giving? We hear a lot of that, right? We hear, well, we're giving them, you know, onesies, we're giving them diapers. Well, the thing is that those things can be obtained through legitimate organizations that aren't trying to lie to people about, you know, their healthcare choices. And so, you know, I think that, again, like some of the statistics that I read, we're giving, you know, like this one CPC $32,000, but they only saw 9 people. Now, those 9 people might have gotten the things that you said, but is it worth $3,600 per person to provide that when there's many other community organizations that provide those same things? And so to me, it's just, again, going back to like efficiency and like, why are we giving the, you know, there's tons of nonprofits in the state that provide parenting classes, that provide, you know, baby items or whatever. And, you know, I would recommend, you know, there's been a really great documentary about CPCs where they showed that a lot of these organizations, they will give you a box of diapers, but I'm sorry, you have 18 more years to raise that child. And the promise of like that continuing support is never fulfilled. It's like, it's very temporary, and then the people, you know, they maybe talk that person out of abortion or something like that, and then, you know, they're stuck, you know, for the rest of their lives, making a choice that maybe they wouldn't have made if they went to that center. And so I just think that, again, you know, taxpayer money needs to be accountable. And again, the reporting, and I'd be happy to send you the reports, it's very vague about what they're actually doing. And some of the reporting shows that the CEOs and like the staff at these places is making over $100,000 a year to operate a small nonprofit. I mean, that seems crazy to me. Yeah.
And then follow, given your comment about taxpayers wanting greater accountability, should there be legislation put forward that requires stronger accountability of directed grants from the legislature, no matter what they're going to?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I'm not going to speak, you know, a blanket statement for everything, but I think, again, I think if the taxpayers are giving money to any kind of program, we should know that it's actually being effective and it's being used efficiently. And I mean, that would be the case for a business or anything. And so, you know, I don't think businesses are just going to hand out money to people and not expect a return on that investment. And right now, we have no idea if we're getting a return on any of these investments. So, yeah.
Do you think by framing this bill as, you know, fiscal responsibility and whatnot, it has, you know, more legs? I mean, I guess my question is, you know, what's the next step after this bill? It's great to propose legislation, but will this have any kind of movement?
Well, like he said, I file these bills every year, and unfortunately, the majority party in this building doesn't seem to have much interest in having any kind of effective or transparency around this money. It's very disappointing, like some of the speakers said. That's a choice. That's a moral choice and a policy choice that they're making, and if they don't feel that it's important to really have any transparency around this, then, you know, all I can do is introduce the bills. And honestly, since I've started working on this issue, I've been here 8 years, I probably either filed a bill with Representative Butler or filed amendments since almost the beginning. I mean, we've both been working on this for 8 to 10 years. It has raised the profile of this issue. And that's the point, is that we are continuing to speak out about this. And I mean, it has, like the Assembly article, Carolina, or Cardinal and Pine, News and Observer, we are constantly raising we are constantly raising awareness about this issue, and that's a win to me, because more and more people are upset about it. and speaking out about it like this group that's with us today. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, even though you don't see traction with some of this legislation, it is incredibly important to continue to put it forward so that the public understands that there are just about as many people in this building who feel very differently about the way we're doing business around here. It's important that they know that our values are different, our policy positions are different, and that if we were given the reins, this is the way we would comport ourselves. And it's funny that these folks who are in charge of the budget right now that we don't have, just a few short years ago were jumping up and down about fiscal responsibility and conservative spending and transparency and accountability and all these words. Well, you don't hear those uttered in this building anymore. And so it's so hypocritical of them to pretend to be that type of politician and to not complete a budget and to not expect transparency for the money that they are spending. So, yeah.
I have one more question.
I love it.
I'm glad you're interested.
Yeah.
Can you speak more to the religious aspect of the religion being used, freedom of religion, by these pregnancy crisis centers, and how you make policy around that without restricting, someone's right to freedom of religion?
I can start. You want to?
No, go on.
I mean, one thing that we'll say is, a huge important point about today is that people of faith across North Carolina are united in this work to continue to raise awareness about this issue. We believe that all people in North Carolina should have the information and the resources to take action in accordance with their faith and values. What crisis pregnancy centers are doing are imposing a particular religious ideology onto the people who walk through their doors. They, as my colleagues have beautifully spoken about, they are not expert in healthcare, but they are expert in advertising and deceiving the public. The role of faith in this work is to say that we are not governed by the policy choices of a particular minority politic of a particular faith in this state. That when we create the conditions of a truly religiously pluralistic culture, we are, as we said, creating the conditions in which everyone can take action in accordance with their faith. This is the exact opposite of that. And that is why it's important that all of us join these incredible elected officials in making sure that we are raising awareness within our communities, because I would put money on the fact that the people that are funding these crisis pregnancy centers are hoping and praying that the people of this state don't know that it's happening. They are banking on the fact that nobody is noticing, because the truth is that the majority of people in this state do not agree with this type of deception and this use of taxpayer dollars. And I'll let my colleagues speak more about the religious element of this.
I was going to say also just that over time, as experts in marketing, they have sometimes adjusted the language that they use. Previously, crisis pregnancy centers have more often used explicit religious language. And now they're sort of changing what the inside of these so-called clinics look like to make them look more like medical facilities, using more medical terminology as opposed to religious language. And that shift sort of like reflects probably a lot of the population who are coming and understanding what is and is not a medical facility. And so I think that they have also shifted some of their religious language over time, trying to masquerade more as medical facilities instead of community centers.
I'll just add briefly that religious freedom, when applied properly, is not to be a weapon. It is to be a shield, to protect people in practicing their faith and protection from someone else's faith being imposed upon them. And so when it gets weaponized and distorted as a power of oppression, that is when we know that it's not true religious freedom. That is not within any of our faith traditions, to use power over someone, to use deceptive practices. If they really stood by their values, they would be transparent about who they are, what they provide, and what they don't. And then people who choose to use them are free to do so, and they're free to fundraise with whoever decides to support their mission, but it should not be public dollars. That is a tool of white Christian nationalism right there. That is a distortion of religion for power over and power against the most marginalized.
And that is what we are seeing across all these issues. I just want to say, we have to draw the connection here between what we are seeing in these crisis pregnancy centers, what we are seeing in other Christian nationalist policy imposition on ability for trans individuals to receive health care and gender affirming care, to see what is happening in our schools with the so-called Parents' Bill of Rights and all of the ways in which LGBTQ issues, book banning, across healthcare, across all of the issues that deeply impact North Carolinians. This agenda is front and center, and the majority party in this moment is the one that is are the architects of those impacts. So we have to tell the truth about the ways in which all of the issues we are dealing with in the General Assembly across education, healthcare, and beyond are all tied to this central agenda of Christian nationalism.
Well, thank you all. If you have more questions, I'm sure we'll be sticking around or out in the courtyard if you have more questions for any of the speakers. But thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Yeah.